Mastering compliance and governance. Your compliance framework is a ticking time bomb of non-compliance. Where does the organization's current compliance framework stand in relation to its alignment with industry best practices? And how are its components specifically tailored to meet the distinct regulatory requirements that govern its operations? In the context of compliance and governance, a comprehensive assessment of the organization's current compliance framework is crucial to identify areas of alignment with industry best practices and components that require tailoring to meet distinct regulatory requirements. To achieve this, a thorough evaluation of the existing framework should be conducted, focusing on its design, implementation, and ongoing maintenance. Firstly, a review of the compliance framework's underlying principles and objectives should be performed to ensure they are aligned with industry best practices. This includes examining the framework's risk-based approach, scalability, and adaptability to evolving regulatory requirements. The review should also assess whether the framework is designed to promote a culture of compliance throughout the organization, encouraging accountability and transparency among employees, management, and the board of directors. Next, the framework's governance structure should be evaluated to ensure it provides clear lines of authority, responsibility, and communication. This includes assessing the roles and responsibilities of the compliance officer, audit committee, and other stakeholders involved in the compliance process. The review should also examine the framework's mechanisms for reporting compliance matters to the board of directors and senior management, ensuring that they are timely, accurate, and actionable. The compliance framework's risk management process should also be assessed to determine whether it is robust, comprehensive, and integrated into the organization's overall risk management strategy. This includes evaluating the framework's risk assessment methodologies, risk rating systems, and risk mitigation strategies to ensure they are adequate, effective, and regularly reviewed. The review should also examine whether the framework incorporates a continuous monitoring and review process to identify, assess, and respond to emerging risks and regulatory changes. In addition, the framework's policies, procedures, and standards should be reviewed to ensure they are clear, concise, and relevant to the organization's specific regulatory requirements. This includes assessing whether the framework's documentation is updated regularly to reflect changes in laws, regulations, and industry best practices. The review should also examine whether the framework's policies, procedures, and standards are communicated effectively to employees, and whether they are accessible and understood by all stakeholders. The compliance framework's training and awareness program should also be evaluated to ensure it is comprehensive, ongoing, and tailored to the specific needs of employees, management, and the board of directors. This includes assessing whether the program covers topics such as regulatory requirements, industry best practices, and the organization's policies, procedures, and standards. The review should also examine whether the program includes mechanisms for tracking employee participation, assessing knowledge retention, and providing feedback and support. The framework's audit and monitoring processes should also be assessed to ensure they are regular, thorough, and independent. This includes evaluating the framework's audit methodologies, sampling techniques, and reporting requirements to ensure they are adequate, effective, and unbiased. The review should also examine whether the framework incorporates a process for identifying, reporting, and remediating compliance deficiencies and weaknesses. Furthermore, the compliance framework's incident response and remediation process should be reviewed to ensure it is prompt, thorough, and effective in responding to compliance breaches and deficiencies. This includes assessing whether the framework's incident response process is clearly documented, regularly reviewed, and communicated to all stakeholders. The review should also examine whether the framework incorporates a root cause analysis and remediation process to address the underlying causes of compliance breaches and deficiencies. Finally, the compliance framework's metrics and reporting process should be evaluated to ensure it provides accurate, timely, and relevant information to stakeholders. This includes assessing whether the framework's metrics are clear, measurable, and actionable, and whether they are used to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of the compliance program. The review should also examine whether the framework's reporting process is transparent, providing stakeholders with a clear understanding of the organization's compliance posture and performance. In conclusion, a thorough assessment of the organization's current compliance framework is essential to identify areas of alignment with industry best practices and components that require tailoring to meet distinct regulatory requirements. By evaluating the framework's underlying principles, governance structure, risk management process, policies, training program, audit and monitoring processes, incident response process, and metrics and reporting process, the organization can identify opportunities for improvement, optimize its compliance program, and ensure a robust and effective compliance framework that supports its strategic objectives. The Compliance Conundrum: a tale of identity, regulation, and judgment. As I sat across from the CEO of Global Corp, a multinational conglomerate, I could sense the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The company was at a crossroads, grappling with the complexities of compliance and governance in a rapidly evolving regulatory landscape. The stakes were high, with reputational risk, financial penalties, and even criminal liability hanging precariously in the balance. In my experience, the most effective compliance frameworks are those that are deeply rooted in the fabric of an organization's identity. It's not just about checking boxes or meeting minimum regulatory requirements. It's about cultivating a culture that values integrity, transparency, and accountability. So, I asked the CEO to walk me through Global Corp's current compliance framework to get a sense of how it was perceived and practiced throughout the organization. What I heard was a laundry list of policies, procedures, and controls, a veritable compliance manual that was as thick as a phone book. It was clear that Global Corp had invested significant time and resources into building its compliance infrastructure, but something was amiss. The CEO's tone betrayed a sense of unease, a feeling that despite their best efforts, they were still vulnerable to the whims of regulators and the uncertainties of the global economy. As we dug deeper, I began to notice a disconnect between Global Corp's stated values and its day-to-day practices. The company's mission statement touted a commitment to excellence, integrity, and sustainability, but in reality, the pressure to meet quarterly earnings targets often took precedence over ethical considerations. It was as if the organization had developed a sort of split personality, with compliance seen as a necessary evil rather than an integral part of its DNA. I recalled a conversation I had with a former colleague, a seasoned ethics officer who had worked with numerous organizations in crisis. He once told me that compliance is not about avoiding risk, but about embracing a set of values that guide your actions. In that moment, I realized that Global Corp needed to reconnect with its own sense of purpose and identity. So, I proposed a novel approach. Let's create a compliance compass, a bespoke framework that would serve as a North Star for the organization's decision-making. We would distill Global Corp's core values into a set of principles that would guide its interactions with regulators, customers, and stakeholders. These principles would be concise, actionable, and woven into the fabric of daily operations. The CEO was intrigued, but also skeptical. "How do we make this more than just a poster on the wall?" she asked. I replied, "By making it a living, breathing part of your organization's rhythm." We would establish regular compliance councils, where senior leaders would gather to discuss critical issues, debate moral dilemmas, and explore the nuances of regulatory requirements. Over the next several months, we worked tirelessly to develop and refine the compliance compass. We conducted workshops, focus groups, and interviews across the organization, gathering input from employees at all levels. We crafted a set of principles that were both aspirational and practical, providing a clear moral compass for the company's decision-making. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when we established a compliance ambassadors program. We identified a group of passionate, articulate employees who would serve as champions for the compliance compass, providing guidance, support, and feedback to their colleagues. These ambassadors became the human faces of compliance, helping to translate abstract principles into tangible actions. As Global Corp began to operationalize its new compliance compass, something remarkable happened. Employees started to feel empowered, rather than constrained, by the company's commitment to compliance. They began to see the value in doing the right thing, not just because it was required, but because it was essential to the organization's long-term success. The CEO reported a noticeable shift in the company's culture, with employees at all levels speaking up, asking tough questions, and challenging questionable practices. The compliance councils became a forum for robust discussion and debate, where senior leaders could grapple with complex issues and explore creative solutions. Of course, this journey was not without its challenges. There were times when the compliance ambassadors faced resistance or pushback from their colleagues. There were moments when the CEO and her team had to make difficult, unpopular decisions that balanced the need for compliance with the demands of the business. Throughout this process, I was struck by the CEO's unwavering commitment to doing the right thing, even when it was hard. She understood that compliance was not just a regulatory requirement, but a fundamental aspect of Global Core's identity. As she said in one of our final meetings, "We're not just building a compliance framework, we're building a better company." As I looked around the room, I saw a team of leaders who had come to embrace a profound truth: that compliance and governance were not obstacles to success, but essential components of a well-functioning organization. They had discovered that by aligning their actions with their values, they could build a culture of integrity, transparency, and accountability, a culture that would serve them well in the years to come.